Ambassador Zekth had witnessed many horrors in his diplomatic career spanning 4 solar cycles. He had negotiated ceasefires between the acid-spitting Melkari and the crystalline Vorthak. He had survived the great plague ships of Kepler-7. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what the humans called recess, the Galactic Council's first cultural exchange program. With Earth had seemed routine, a simple goodwill gesture. Allow a small delegation to observe human educational facilities. What could possibly go wrong with watching younglings learn? Everything, as it turned out. They're doing it again, whispered Sub-Ambassador Yilka, her tentacles trembling as she peered through the reinforced observation window. Below them, in what humans cheerfully termed a playground, 30 Earth children between the ages of 6 and 12 were engaged in activities that would make seasoned galactic marines weep. Zekth watched in fascination and growing horror as a small human female, no more than 7 standard years old, launched herself from a metal structure the humans called monkey bars. She flew through the air, with the casual grace of a seasoned pilot, caught another bar mid-flight, and swung with enough force to power a small shuttle. Note for the record, Zekth spoke into his translator. Human juveniles possess grip strength sufficient to suspend their entire body weight using only their upper appendages. Duration indefinite, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. A larger human child, perhaps 9 standard years, decided the bars were too easy. Instead of using his hands, he hooked his knees over the bar and hung upside down, blood rushing to his head in what would kill most species within minutes. The other children cheered this death-defying stunt as if it were perfectly normal. By the 7 moons of Krathos, Yilka gasped. Are they trying to redistribute their circulatory fluid? Is this some form of ritual sacrifice? The human supervisor, a pleasant female named Mrs. Henderson, noticed their distress. Oh, don't worry about Tommy, she said with a smile that didn't reach her predator's eyes. He's just being a typical boy. Yesterday, he tried to see how many times he could flip off the high bar before landing. And you allowed this? Zekth's voice cracked. Well, after the 3rd flip, we made him wear the helmet. Zekth species had no concept of protective cranial gear because they had never evolved activities that regularly resulted in head trauma. The fact that humans had not only evolved such activities but created specialized equipment to survive them was deeply unsettling. The observation continued. A group of children had invented what they called extreme tag, a game where they chased each other across under and through a complex obstacle course that included a spinning metal disc they called a merry-go-round. Watching them leap from the moving platform onto a nearby climbing structure, Zekth calculated the G-forces involved and felt his second stomach lurch. Mrs. Henderson, he managed, what is the casualty rate for this activity? Oh, we haven't had a serious injury in weeks. Little Sarah broke her arm last month, but she was back the next day asking when the cast would come off so she could play again. She wanted to return after suffering skeletal damage. Kids are resilient, Mrs. Henderson said with that terrifying human smile. Plus, she got everyone to sign her cast, made her quite popular. They celebrated injury. They wore their wounds as status symbols. The revelation struck Zekth like a plasma bolt. These weren't just children playing. These were the offspring of Earth, a class-thwarting Deathworld where everything was actively trying to kill everything else. These games weren't recreation. They were survival training. As if summoned by his thoughts, a new horror emerged. The children had formed 2 groups and were pelting each other with spherical projectiles in something called dodgeball. The velocity and accuracy would have impressed military marksmen. When one child was struck in the face and fell backward, Zekth was certain they were witnessing a fatality. The child bounced up, laughed, and charged back into the melee with renewed vigor. Impossible, Yilka breathed. The kinetic energy transfer should have caused severe cranial trauma. Oh, that's nothing, Mrs. Henderson said cheerfully. You should see them play Red Rover. We had to ban it after 3 broken collarbones in 1 game. You banned an activity for being too dangerous? Hope flickered in Zekth's chest. Only during school hours. They still play it at home. The hope died. The final straw came during something called King of the Hill, a game where children fought for dominance of a small elevated platform using nothing but raw physical force and tactical thinking. Zekth watched a tiny human female, no bigger than his hand, systematically outmaneuver and defeat opponents twice her size through what could only be described as guerrilla warfare tactics. When the playground session ended, the children lined up with military precision, their faces flushed with exertion and joy, many sporting what humans called battle scars, small cuts, bruises and scrapes they wore like medals of honor. Mrs. Henderson, Zekth asked quietly, "How many of these children will survive to adulthood?" She looked puzzled. All of them, hopefully. Though knowing this bunch, they'll find bigger and better ways to terrify their parents before then. That night, Zekth filed his report to the Galactic Council. Subject, Human Military Assessment. Urgent Priority Council members. We have been operating under a critical misunderstanding. We assumed humans were simply another aggressive species. We were wrong. Humans are not trained for war, they are born for it. What we witnessed was not military conditioning, but childhood recreation. These are not soldiers. These are their children at play. Recommend immediate revision of threat assessment protocols. If this is what human young consider entertainment, I submit that we have grossly underestimated the species' combat capabilities. Request immediate diplomatic immunity for all council members. We are not dealing with warriors. We are dealing with the children of a Deathworld who learned that survival itself is a game, and they are very, very good at games. 3 months later, when the first reports came in of human children teaching young Zentorians how to play Capture the Flag, the Galactic Council declared a state of emergency. The humans, for their part, were delighted that their kids were making friends. Ambassador Zekth never returned to fieldwork. He now serves in the Council's Department of Human Safe Activities, where he spends his days creating guidelines for species interaction with human recreational activities. His latest publication, 37 Ways Human Fun Can Accidentally Cause Galactic Incidents, is considered required reading for all diplomatic personnel. The children, meanwhile, have started teaching the galaxy how to play hopscotch. The casualty reports are still coming in,